Well, this morning, American TikTok users remain uncertain what's going to happen with this app. It went dark on Saturday. It came back on Sunday. The app shut down for U.S. users for several hours because of a federal ban. TikTok's return only came after President-elect Trump announced plans to issue an executive order after taking office today. And joining us this morning to talk more about it is our good friend, longtime Good Day Orlando guest, attorney Whitney Bone. Great to have you. Good to see you, Whitney.
Good to see you. Thanks for being here. What a wild weekend for TikTok, for sure. 170 million people are on this app. You saw a lot of people on social media saying how upset they were, how they were reeling from all this, and then on Sunday it came back.
Right.
So, do you think it's going to stay back for a while? Like, kind of, what's your thought on the next steps here?
We're in a totally uncharted territory right now. I mean, we're in this weird space where we have a law on the books that got there with bipartisan support. You know, this wasn't something where it was one side versus the other. Like, this got there for a reason, and then the Supreme Court upheld it unanimously. But we have a president coming into office today who says, you know what, I'm not going to enforce it right now because I want to try to resolve this. I want to try to get this worked out in a way where we have the sale take place where we don't have the same concerns about the Chinese government having access to, you know, all of America's private information, and then it being a national security risk as well.
You brought up the Chinese Communist Party, and that is the big concern. And so President Trump wants to work out a deal. And I was just looking at Twitter last night. Laura Ingraham, who is very conservative, says the notion that we should be seeking fairness with the Communist Party of China is wrong because they will never treat us fairly, and it's naive to pretend otherwise. So it's sort of like, some people would say, like negotiating with the devil in a sense, right? How do you go about negotiating that?
I'm not sure. You know, I think where we are at this point is that we have real security interests. And, you know, I'm not the type who usually is just following a mindset of trust us with the government, but I think there are actually really real security interests here at play. And we have, you know, our government who is pretty unanimously behind this, our Supreme Court who's unanimously behind this. And I know it sucks to put it in layman terms, in terms of, you know, people want to be on TikTok, but I think these are modern problems where we're having laws that are trying to catch up to them in a way where it may feel unfair, but what we need to do is make sure that we're safe and that our national security isn't compromised because we have the Chinese government, who is considered an adversary, a foreign adversary, having access to all this information that is a real threat to perhaps our safety in the long run.
Sure. You know, President Trump, when he comes into office, he says he's going to sign a bunch of executive orders, one of them, you know, talking about TikTok. What do you think that executive order really can do? Is it just to say, hey, we've got 90 days essentially to try to work this out?
Yeah, I mean, the statute as it's written basically says that there can be one-time executive order for 90 days if there's already a sale, kind of essentially in layman's terms, on the books. That would be a qualified divestiture, which means that it's a company that has enough interest in the United States that then we don't have these same concerns about the Chinese government having its hand in the pot. But you know, I think that it kind of is a gray area in terms of what are these companies supposed to do that run these platforms? You know, what is Apple supposed to do? What is Google supposed to do? They have lawyers, they have shareholders. And so I don't really know what's going to happen at this point. And it is only a 90-day window as it's written on the books. Now, if the executive branch through President Trump decides, you know, we're not going to enforce this, there's still some issues there in terms of, well, what do businesses do? What does Apple do? What does Google do?
Right.
How do they handle this when there's a law that says they can't do it?
Right.
Ugh, it just seems like a big giant mess, right?
Yeah.
And so 50%, if as government, is the president-elect is saying, if we were to get 50% with a U.S. company, that also doesn't say that we take control, right? That's just half. So it's almost like you need 51%, right, if you want to take full control?
It would seem that way in terms of having a majority say in what happens and what doesn't. That seems what it would make the most sense at this point. It's a little unclear.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, a lot is brewing in D.C. for sure.
Well, Whitney, thank you. We always love having you. Whitney Bone, local defense attorney. Great to have you with us this morning.